Hi, and welcome back to Hirewell's YouTube channel. We know you don't want to miss a thing, so click that subscribe button below and keep tuning in. And now, Robin and I are happy to present mental wellness in the workplace. I hope you enjoy it. All right, Robin. So we've been talking a lot about our own mental wellness, right? And how that is manifested in our workplace. You've been gracious enough to join me in being open about our own conditions and challenges. So I just wanted to get your perspective on kind of like the stress of success, especially in this industry in recruiting. Tell us about like the life of Robin and like what it's like managing a function like you run as an individual contributor.
Yeah, so it's fun, first of all, always fun, but also so it was one of those things where when I was younger, I realized that having both. Well, I didn't know I had an anxiety disorder at the time, but having ADHD, I realized there was like a lot of stuff that I could like do at once, and like I could like pivot and handle a lot of things at once, and in some ways that like really serves what I currently do, because I'm like managing, like I'm an individual contributor, but I'm handling a lot of like the sourcing tools and all the different functions that go along with sourcing beyond just like finding candidates.
Yeah.
So like a lot of that has been like because of my ADHD, it's like I can do a lot. It's really great. I can pivot. I can like have like several plates up in the air at the same time, like spinning plates. But because of my anxiety, I get hung up on the most ridiculous things and like super stressed about like how am I doing X, how am I doing Y right? Like, and a lot of my productivity can come to a standstill if I like let myself fixate on that too much, which is kind of like the like you have like all these like huge bursts of productivity, and then you have like a day where you're just like, I don't know how to send this email. Like I just do not know how to send this email. And kind of trying to make sure that I stay on top of, both of like my mental health, and also not letting my mental health get in the way of being like a productive person. Not that I think like everybody needs to always be like a productive person at all times, but I like being productive. So I'm just kind of like juggling that. And it's been really interesting. Mark gives me some, he gives me some guidance, but he also like he knows where I need like boundaries in order to make sure I stay on task. But he also knows where I need to just kind of run off. So it's great.
Yeah, I think I've always thought about how, I mean, when we were prepping this for everybody watching, we were very open about what we specifically deal with. And I immediately was like, God, sourcing is such like a great task for you because it is like multifaceted. You're dealing with like five different people asking for five different things or five different profiles, and like you can compartmentalize that. I think everybody can relate to that idea of like always having to be on, and like, anxiety isn't just for people with actual anxiety disorder. Like everybody has it. And like it's really really hard to send some of those emails sometimes. So like you go through those like manic stages where like your productivity is through the roof, and like there's worlds where like senior leadership sees that, and then you have like the off day or the off couple days, and they're like, what's going on, what's happened, and it's like,
Yeah. Are you okay? Like, you're not all over the place like you usually are. You haven't messaged like 100 people today, and it's like, well, I'm having a day.
yeah,
Um,
what's happening here is I'm being a human being.
yeah, I'm like existing in my space. And it's also interesting, like, along with like managing tasks, but also managing like the different people that I work with and all the different, my role is a very much jack of all trades sort of role. A lot of sourcers who stay in sourcing for a long time, the way that they're successful, I've noticed in my personal experience, is by becoming like a person who can like fill up the gaps, right? So there's a lot of like, this person prefers, that I just put candidates on his calendar. This person prefers that I like send her an email introducing her to the candidate, like all this other kind of stuff. So staying on top of all those different things in some ways, I know with ADHD, like memory loss can be a really big issue, but it's not always with me, so which is good, but also when you're having kind of like the off sort of day and somebody's like, hey, what's up? And you're like, well, I can't really like explain it to you without giving you like my life story. So I don't know if you want to hear about how I was in 7th grade. So I'll just say that I'm not feeling well.
For me, it's very much like general anxiety disorder coupled with manic depression, and it manifests itself in similar things that you just described, but there's a lot of differences too. I don't have ADHD, so I don't have that propensity to like anxiety has rumination qualities, but like I don't stop start. I can imagine where that would be incredibly frustrating, but I also understand how it can be harnessed in a role like you have. For me, the thing that resonated for me was like, I literally don't know how I'm going to send this email. Like the dread of that sort of stuff. Being a manager and like embracing that and understanding the responsibility that I have to ensuring that the day-to-day quality of work and life for my people is engaging and fun and challenging, but like there's an added level of responsibility in that, like their careers are in some instances in my hands. They all are going to make their own path, but there is a reliance on your manager to show you the right way and give you best practices and like guide you through things that are difficult and be the steadying force. And when I don't feel like I'm a steadying force, but I have to put on the brave face, it is very, very debilitating. So I guess my advice to any managers or senior leadership out there that experience some of the things that I experience, you can only be so good to your people as you are to yourself. And so your own mental wellness, however, like I'm not a meditator. Some people really like to meditate. Like for me, it's sitting down and listening to a record, or, just getting lost in playing bricks with my son. Like whatever your outlet is, like you have to expose yourself to it and you have to let yourself get immersed in it, or else everything else will engulf you. And then that conversely starts the domino effect of being more and more destructive to the people that are in your stead. Robin, one of the things again that we really, really touched on when we were getting ready to do this series was how incredibly hard folks like us, or folks with anxiety and or depression or other mental illnesses, how hard they can be on themselves. And I just wanted to hear from your perspective, like what it was like joining us, during a pandemic, and how that idea of being hard on yourself manifested itself.
Yeah, I mean, like if we start with talking about like being in a pandemic, right? I was already at a heightened sense of like anxiety. Like I joined when Chicago was going through its peak. So, we were all like indoors, heightened anxiety. So we're already there, we're already stressed. But also this role was kind of created, but also reinvented. And when I joined the company, there was a few things that were like kind of like guideposts for the role, but there was kind of a lot of gray area, which is great. And it can be really interesting to see like what people can create when they have gray area. So one of the things that I started to notice very early on when I was working within the gray area is that I would fixate on maybe the wrong things, or I wouldn't be sure like what I should be focusing on, like what I should be working on. And it took a little while for Mark and I to find kind of like, Mark being my manager, finding the right sort of cadence for figuring out like, okay, how do I figure out things? Like what do I focus on? Like, what do I pay attention to? And what do I work within? And what can be kind of disregarded? One of the side effects or main parts of having ADHD is that you don't know how to prioritize things. It feels like there's 5 phones in front of you. This is an example somebody said on the internet. It sounds like there's 5 phones in front of you and they're all ringing and you don't know which one to pick up first. And there's like, usually people have an easier time of like sorting it. I don't know, like not me. But So kind of like the issue that I kept running into in my early days at Hirewell is that I wanted to make a really good impression. I wanted people to like me, and I also wanted to do a really good job, right? Like, it's a new job. And it's a company that like I was really excited to join, but I had these 5 phones in front of me that were like ringing constantly, and I just would never know which one to pick up. So kind of getting into the weeds with like figuring out which things should be prioritized over which things, and like focusing on like, if I do A, then I do B, then I do C, but actually creating the labels of A, B, and C. And I think one of the problems that we kept running into is I'd be really hard on myself, and I maybe would be like, I know I should be able to figure this out just from context clues. And I wouldn't, maybe wouldn't speak up as much as I should have. And the problem with anxiety is you get trapped in your own sort of cage that you create yourself. And you just sit there and you go like, I'm terrible at this. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm horrible. Like, they're going to fire me, whatever. But all you have to do is just go like, hey, do you have a second? Can we talk about this? I think that's like a very tough thing that people with anxiety are just kind of constantly navigating and constantly learning how to deal with.
Which in and of itself, like the ability, I have had to learn over and over and over again how to ask for the assistance and acknowledge that, I guess it just gets back to the main point, like, you will fail. You will fail. I will fail. Everybody watching this will fail. So it's one of the only constants. I mean, for me, it goes to the anxiety, which cycles into the depressive episodes for me, in that if there are enough constant situations where I feel like I've let somebody down, or I feel like I haven't done my best work, that could have been a result from the anxiety, but the ultimate ending situation is the depression, which worsens everything. So that's been my journey, like how to figure out how to deal with all of that. And like the perfection standard, again, it's like talking about unicorns. I made a post, just an offhanded post about how I'm always asked to like look for unicorns, and I was like, I'm wondering why I'm being told to look for a mythical creature that doesn't exist. It's like, it's not possible. No one's perfect. If I'm not extending myself as much grace as I'm extending to everybody else, again, like, it just kind of all rolls into this idea that you're not giving your whole self or your whole ability to every single thing that you're doing. And that in and of itself can be destructive to your professional work product. The one other thing that you said that I couldn't agree with more is, I want people to like me. And when I don't think that I'm doing well, or I don't think that people like me, or like my customer feels like I haven't done a good job, that makes me like physically anxious and sad. And I think everybody has to understand that across the line, whether or not this is something that you actually clinically struggle with or not, it's something everyone experiences to some degree, and you have to be able to your analogy, like, figure out which phone you need to pick up, take the deep breath, like take a step back and say, like, I'm going to work on stuff one at a time. I can't build Rome in a day, but I can take a step back and start to build the foundation for what that might look like.